Hi, everyone. A pleasant good afternoon to all, and welcome to the DevFest 2021 Caribbean Day 2. I will be your host for today. I'm Stephanie Simon, GDG co organizer of Georgetown, and we will be going through our spotlight interviews for our second day of the DevFest. First off, we have Mr. Ubika, who will be talking about the introduction to penetration testing. Secondly, we have Miss Ricola, who will be giving us some insight on entrepreneurship. Next, we're going to talk about Miss Janiqua, who is a Twitter developer insider, and she will be talking about how to build your own Twitter bot in one day. And last but not least, to close off our day 2, we will have Mr. Malcolm Bourne, who is a content creator to close us off here. So let's get right into our spotlight interviews. First off, with Mr. Ubika.
This section, I'm Nicholas Mendez, and for this session, I'm joined by Ubika Jeleno, who is our security expert, and he's always giving these talks in DevFest, and I always look forward to them. So, Ubika, how are you doing?
Oh, great. Yeah. It's well, I remember saying last year that, I would come with something security related. So, I mean, this year I am coming with it. So, this should be a very interesting talk, and I hope everybody is able to enjoy it.
Excellent, excellent. So, without further ado, I guess we can go right into it. Take it away, Ubika.
Okay. Hi, everyone. For those who know me through Caribbean developers and through past GDG DevFest talks, my name is Obika Jelno. I'm a cybersecurity professional with over 10 years of experience. And today I'm actually going to talk about penetration testing and give a slight intro into penetration testing. So just to quickly go over the agenda as it relates to this presentation, I'm just going to briefly go over what is a penetration test, the importance of a penetration test, types of penetration tests, pen testing methodologies, as well as the tools that you would use in a penetration test. I'm also going to go through a demo at the end, so it should be very exciting. So, what is a penetration test? So, I usually scour the internet to see, what kind of definitions I could get as it relates to the topic that I'm speaking on. I try to take from credible sources. So, this particular definition is actually from the NIST standard. NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's an American institution. And it briefly describes or encapsulates what a penetration test is. What I would say about this particular definition is that it mainly speaks to what feature of the system or the application is being tested as part of the penetration test, which is the security features. Penetration tests don't usually look at functionality of an application system or network. The whole purpose of the test is to test security features. So things like access control, data integrity, and other aspects of your application systems or networks. A penetration test will more or less focus on that. Now, you'll also see here on this slide that I kind of shortened it to pen test. Pen test is just the shortened version of penetration test. And as I go along in the presentation, I'll just be mentioning pen test, but I actually really mean penetration tests. So just to quickly go over, penetration test is security testing, which involves evaluators mimicking real-world attacks in an attempt to identify ways to circumvent security features of an application system or network. So remember, penetration test is not only localized just to the application or to a system, it can also involve networks. That being said, a penetration test mainly tries to identify vulnerabilities in systems and networks, as well as applications. It's a good security practice to always perform a penetration test, especially when you have a application going from its test environment to live. So just before you migrate your changes from your test environment into production is always a good time for at least a major upgrade or a significant upgrade to your system to run a penetration test to test those security features on your application to ensure that everything is in order in terms of the access control and the various other security features that you would have embedded in that system or in that application to better protect your users' data. That being said, the main purpose of a penetration test is to build confidence and trust, right? And you're trying to build confidence and trust in the security measures that you have utilized or built into your application system or your network. As we go along, we'll talk about some of these things. So the importance of penetration testing. So here I just have a quick overview in terms of what penetration testing is about, and really and truly the focus, or at least the main focus as when it comes to a penetration test, is to understand the threats to your IT systems and networks. Once you understand those threats, you end up reducing your attack surface. So the more you understand the threats to those systems and to those networks, the more you can enable security measures to prevent those threats from occurring on your systems or on your networks, and therefore reduce your attack surfaces. It also tries to improve any sort of security monitoring you have on your applications or your systems. And also it ensures that, software development and architecture practices as it relates to the development of these systems are more secure. So as you get better with your penetration testing and more regular with your penetration testing, all these things tend to kind of increase. And on the opposite end, your security vulnerabilities, which is what you're trying to understand and trying to mitigate against, decrease. So you have various security vulnerabilities that affect systems, applications, and networks. Things like broken access controls, data leakages, unpatched systems. You have injection type attacks, software and data integrity issues, security login failures, as well as forgery requests. All those security vulnerabilities are usually inherent in those systems or in those applications. And by penetration testing, you're able to identify those vulnerabilities and by extension, mitigate against it. So what are the types of penetration testing? So there are three main types of pen tests. You have black box, white box, and gray box. So black box. Black box is basically to emulate a real world scenario. And what do I mean by real world scenario? You are trying to emulate a hacker, right? Or in other words, when you contract a pen tester or ethical hacker, what you're basically telling them is that, okay, I want you to hack my system. I'm not giving you any information about it. So you're to pretend that you're a hacker and try and infiltrate my system. That being said, when you contract your ethical hacker to come in and do the penetration test, they can only use publicly available information about the company. And the majority of the time, that black box test is done external to the company's network. It's always an external test. So the ethical hacker would be coming in from your internet side of your network, right? So most times when you hear about black box tests, it's usually on websites, internet-facing type web applications, or even VPNs as well. Sometimes people do try to do penetration tests on their VPN. That being said, some of the advantages is that it's low cost. It's like a real world scenario. One of the main disadvantages of a black box, though, is that testing is not really in depth. And reason being is because the ethical hacker or the pen tester is not given a lot of information. So most of the times when they then get onto the system, or if they do even get into the system, they don't really have that much time to learn or test everything as it relates to a penetration test. The next type is white box. Now, white box is the direct opposite of black box. It's the ethical hacker or the pen tester is given all the information about the company's networks and systems. That being said, most white box tests tend to be internal to the company's network. It's not to say that you can't do it externally with internet-facing systems, but most white box tests are usually internal penetration tests. So the pen tester usually sits on the internal parts of the network and tries to then hack the system and try and escalate privileges and so on and so forth. One of the main advantages of this type of testing is that there's really minimal effort in terms of the hacking approach and the execution of the hacking approach, because you have more information to plan your attack and execute it properly without any mistakes. And there's also minimal research required. One of the main disadvantages is that it's very high in cost and it can be very labor intensive, right? Because you have all this information, there's a lot of testing that's involved as it relates to this type of pen test. And our last type of penetration test is the gray box. Now, the gray box is a mixture of black and white. Sometimes all the information is provided or some of the information is provided in this type of testing. Also, the test is usually done both externally and internally. So in other words, the hacker can come from either direction, depending on how you want to go through in terms of designing that test. Some of the advantages are similar to white box. Minimal research is required, and minimal time is required in terms of planning the attack. What I would say in terms of disadvantages is that the cost is somewhat a little bit high, but may not be as high as a white box test. Effort can be high depending on the scoping. Gray box tests tend to be very, like I said, in between. It's not totally, most of the times you don't get all of the information. You may get just some of the information. And like I said, it comes in from both ends in terms of the direction of the attack. So let's quickly go over pen testing methodology. So when we're looking at the pen testing methodology, there are really 5 phases as it relates to pen testing methodology. You have reconnaissance, scanning and fingerprinting, gaining of access, maintaining that access, and privilege escalation. So when you're a pen tester and you are starting off your penetration test, the first thing that you do is reconnaissance. And reconnaissance is a way of trying to get information about the target. After that, you try to understand the services and the systems and the vulnerabilities on that target, which is more or less your next phase of the penetration test, which is scanning and fingerprinting. From there, once you identify the system, services, and vulnerabilities, you then try to attack the target system through an identified vulnerability to try and gain access. Now, a vulnerability doesn't necessarily have to be a software vulnerability. It could be something as simple as a misconfiguration in the application, and that allows you to bypass security features. All of that is a vulnerability. There are a lot of vulnerabilities that you also tend to find on web servers. Some web servers allow for unauthenticated connection to the internal parts of the system, and therefore giving you a shell in the system. which you can then maintain that access, which is our next phase, where you try to leverage other vulnerabilities or even the same vulnerability to try and maintain access within the system. Once you maintain that access within the system, the next thing you do is you try to escalate your privileges, or in other words, try to gain administrator access. Once you get that administrator access, you then probably try to pivot and move to the next phase, which you won't really see here, which is either you try to get to another system, pivot to another system, or if there's data on the system that you already have access to, you try to exfiltrate that data. Now, ethical hackers don't exfiltrate, but real world hackers tend to exfiltrate data or steal data from the system. Ethical hackers don't. So that's why you see in this pen testing methodology, you don't see exfiltration of data, right? The reason being is because we are taught not to actually try to gain access and try to steal the company's data, because that is breaking the ethical rules as it relates to ethical hacking. Hence the reason why ethical is front of hacking. Anyway, moving along. So you have that methodology, which actually talks to how you go about doing the penetration test. But what is the actual project approach or the engagement approach with a client if you're ever doing a penetration test with a client? And that being said, I have this simple diagram here. First thing you do is that you try to determine the scope of the engagement, how much systems are in play, what are the rules of engagement, or basically how do you go about doing the penetration tests. You try and clear that up with the client, find any sort of points of contact if something goes wrong, because most times penetration tests tend to break features within the application, causing the client having to probably try and fix those issues that are break. Hence the reason why you try to do a penetration test in your test environment before you go live. It's not to say you can't do penetration tests on your live environment, but it's a lot more riskier if you do it on your live environment. Then you conduct the penetration tests using the methodology approach in the previous slide, and then you clear your tracks. And when I say clear tracks, what do I mean? Most penetration tests require penetration testers to install backdoors or tools to maintain access on the system. So when you conclude your penetration tests, you have to remove those backdoors. And in some instances, you would also want to clear, if the system actually logs data, you want to clear those logs, because if you ever try to do another penetration test, and let's say, for example, there's some security monitoring software that actually picks up on those logs, that security monitoring software may have blacklisted your IP address, and then you'll have to speak with the client in terms of trying to get the client to remove your IP address so that you could try and do the test over again. After that, you do the most important part of penetration testing, which is the report. Nobody likes to do documentation, but documentation is extremely important when it comes to penetration tests. You have to show your client what vulnerabilities are actively exploitable on their systems or on their application or on their networks, and how they go about remediating those vulnerabilities that you found as part of the penetration test. And then more or less that concludes your penetration test. So what are the various pen testing tools? So there are a lot of pen testing tools, a ton load. A lot of these tools are open source and freely available. Some are paid. It varies among the industry. But what I could say is that it can be a lot, but if you more or less understand and practice penetration testing, after a while, you kind of get an understanding of what to use in what situation. So here I have it broken down under the various phases, so from reconnaissance all the way to privilege escalation. So if we look at reconnaissance, you tend to use port scanners. OSINT is open source intelligence tools, and search engines. Yes, search engines are actually used as part of your reconnaissance. All of that is part of the testing as it relates to, or trying to understand the target systems during that reconnaissance phase. After that, you have the port scanners again, but this time they're a different set of tools. You also have vulnerability scanners and web proxies. Vulnerability scanners and web proxies tend to be used to scan not so much systems, but as well, but you could say they also are used to scan web applications, especially the web proxies in particular. OpenZap and Burp Suite are two of the biggest web proxies that are actually used to spy the web applications as well as test them to see if they have any sort of vulnerabilities as well. In terms of port scanners, Nmap tends to be the biggest, or I shouldn't say biggest, but the most common tool that is in any pen tester's arsenal. You will always see a pen tester using Nmap. Going forward, in terms of gain of access, you have public exploits, brute forcing, and automated exploits. Public exploits, this is more or less exploit code or exploit methodologies that are freely available on publicly accessible databases. So exploit DB, there's also CSV database. All of those kind of list out various exploits that can be used to against systems. At least unpatched systems, because if you patch your system, the exploit obviously is not going to work. Brute forcing is around cracking of hashes for passwords, or even brute forcing passwords on a system. So Hashcat is more for cracking. Hydra is more for brute forcing of passwords. And then you have automated exploits like Metasploit and SQL map. Maintaining access, you have reverse shells, you have NCAT, Sucat, MS Venom, and you have local enumeration tools like linenum and linpeas, and so on. And in terms of privilege escalation, you have credential cracking, you have Mimikatz, Hydra, you have Chrono exploits, which you can find on publicly free exploit databases that are available. You have the CVV database and the NVD. And then you also have automated exploits, same Metasploit, Cobalt Strike, so on and so forth. So that more or less covers the penetration testing tools. It's a lot. Trust me, this is just a few of what is there, but there is a lot more. So let's get to the demo. So I am going to do a quick demo or a quick penetration test of Capture the Flag challenge. Now, Capture the Flag challenges are what penetration testers tend to use as practice to kind of keep their skills up to date in terms of various type of attack methodologies and so on. So this one is a challenge named named All-in-One, right? All-in-One is the name of the challenge. It's actually hosted on a cybersecurity training platform called Try Hack Me. The address is actually in the slide right there that you could see. So I'm just going to quickly switch over my screen to show what's going on here. All right. So I have the server up and running right now. So what I'm going to quickly do is I'm going to do a Nmap scan. I'll be moving a little bit fast, but the first thing that we do is we do the Nmap scan on the box. The IP address, I think, is 98.147. So it'll take 2 seconds because it's a pretty fast box. So as you can see from this Nmap scan, we're seeing 3 different services. So you have FTP, SSH, and HTTP. Now, if I want to try and get more information about that, I just add on a couple of tags as it relates to the Nmap scan. This shouldn't take too long to actually complete. All right, so as you can see from here, Nmap now gives us a couple of bits of information as it relates to the actual system itself. It noted that the FTP actually allows for anonymous login. So that is one vulnerability that we found. right? I know for this particular box, there's nothing there on the FTP, so we could skip that. There's definitely a SSH shell here on port 22. So, so we could check that out. And obviously, there is a HTTP Apache server here as well, right? So we could check that out as well. So the first thing I would do usually on this type of box is that I will first check the web server. So to kind of cut down on time, I did check the web server, and there is actually a default page. Now, from this point, I would try to enumerate a little bit more and try and see if there are any other websites or virtual servers on this. Sorry, not virtual servers, virtual hosts, Apache virtual hosts. But I know there is actually a WordPress site on this box, right? So as you could see, we have a WordPress site here, right? Name of the site is called All-in-One. So that being said, I'm going to use another tool here called WP Scan. URL HTTP. Sorry, http:// 10.10.98.147 -e. Okay, so basically what I'm telling the scanner here to do is to scan the WordPress site at this HTTP address on the server and enumerate for users. Right? WP Scan is a WordPress scanning tool. It's freely available, and you can download it and you can scan. I'm just going to skip the update for it. Right. As you can see from it, there are a lot of things that we can see. We can find that there's a theme available. The 2020 theme is available. We identified a couple other things in terms of directory listing is enabled on it. XML RPC is also enabled, and we found actually no. We found what? Right, we found one user, right? Ilana, right? So that's one user that we found. Now, from this point, I would probably try to brute force the password for this user using the same tool, WP Scan, but I know the password already from doing it from before. There's also another vulnerability on this box. Let's see, where is it? There's an actual vulnerable plugin. Let's see if I can find it here. Just run the scan again quickly. But this time I'll scan for vulnerable plugins. VP is usually vulnerable plugins. Oh, it's not finding the plugins. I know there's usually two. There's it says administration email verification. So obviously this user on this WordPress site is administrator, right? So in other words, we just got into the administration account on this particular box, right? So from here, WordPress tends to have the ability, if you're an administrator, you have the ability to actually make changes to themes through the theme editor. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to put in a reverse shell on the 404 template for this particular theme. So I have it here already. Backspace that. I'm going to set up a listener on my box. NC dash NLVP 555. What this basically says is that I'm now listening on this on my attack machine on port 555, right? And I'm going to try and trigger a 404 on this WordPress site. So the easiest way is just to type out something and hit enter. And okay, that didn't work. Hold on. Name. I am the box name is Ileana. So in other words, I'm actually on the Linux system right now. So the next thing I would try to do is I would try to leverage my I would then enumerate inside the box and try and see if I could get a password, but I already know the password for this particular user. So before I do that, let me just do something here quickly. I'm just going to upgrade my shell here quickly. If I have that correct. ID. Okay, so now I am Ileana. Yes, okay, good. Right. So the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to try and gain root privileges. Now the easiest way to do that is to check for sudo permissions. So okay, so I see from sudo permissions, basically, so in order to see whether or not a user has the ability to run sudo on a Linux box, it's just basically sudo L, right? So I see from these permissions that Ilana has the capability to run Sucat without any password, right? So there is a tool that we tend to use called GTFO bins. It's a tool that actually provides a list of binaries that are used in Linux, in which you can use to escalate your privileges on a Linux box, right? So I am going to search for Sucat. So here I have Sucat. Right, and let me see what I have here. I'm looking for the one for sudo. Okay, so it says here that if I run sudo sucat and this command, basically what I would do is I'll be able to gain root privileges. So let me try and run that now. So it's sudo sucat stdin exec :bin/sh. Okay, let me see. And there we go. I have root privileges. So who am I? I am root. And there we go. So now I have control of the box. I can create a new account. To maintain my access, I could install a backdoor, I can install malware, I can do basically whatever I want now on the box. And that more or less concludes my penetration test. So when I'm going back, so after I finish here and I clear up all the logs, I'll go back to the client and I'll indicate to the client, look, I was able to get into your WordPress because there was a easily available password. There was also a vulnerable extension. I don't know why the scan wasn't showing it up, but let me see if I could pull it up here quickly. It's 24. This is an injection type vulnerability. And then what I would do is I would decode it. And if you notice, if you're very familiar with WordPress, you would see that this is actually the config PHP for WordPress. And here we go. I'm seeing the database name, database user, and I have the database password. Another thing that usually happens is that people tend to reuse their passwords. So it just so happened for this particular CTF challenge, the user used not only the database password, not only used their username and database password for the WordPress, they also used it for the database. So this is actually the password that I would have used to get into the admin account on WordPress. So this is just one of the type of vulnerabilities I would have been able to find through going through the boxes. Just for some reason, the scanner didn't pick it up for this demonstration. But sometimes that happens. It could be that at the point in time, the box might be encountering an error. Sometimes that happens, but it's no biggie. So let me go back here. Right. So that concludes my presentation for today. So I'd like to thank you again for having me here on DevFest 2021, the fifth one. And you can reach me on LinkedIn. The address is right there on your screen. Usually I tend to be very active there. And I hope to see you next year for another one.
Great. Thank you so much for this, Ubika. It's really interesting. For full disclosure for the audience, I do teach at university level, and I really like how DevFest talks because I can basically show this at my lectures for students. And we have a course where they actually do go into a bit of security. So we will definitely be showing them this stuff as well. It was really practical and in-depth, and I really appreciate that. So just to be clear, what you demonstrated would have been a WordPress installation in a sandbox environment with known vulnerabilities, right?
Yes.
So when it comes to like the latest edition of WordPress, how successful would these tools be, or how far you can get with that?
So WP Scan was actually I think bought over by Automatic. So it's actually now a part of WordPress, that whole WordPress company. So it's so before they actually maintained a database of vulnerable WordPress plugins and so on. What the scanner does is that the scanner basically pulls from that database, and when it runs the scan, it would actually run through all those vulnerabilities and point out to you if there are any vulnerable plugins, what users are there, and any other issues as it relates to the WordPress installation. So the advantage of it being, I guess, covered under Automatic now is that, Automatic kind of gives it that boost. This company, WordFence has one that is actually pretty.
And it's interesting how you mentioned how Automatic would have actually bought that tool. So I guess they'd use that in their general security strategy and providing tooling for people to be able to self-assess and audit themselves.
It may be possible. I don't know I don't know exactly under what terms they would be using it, but what I would know is that
Okay, great. So from your perspective, locally, and maybe you can speak regionally, what do you think in terms of the evolution, the attitudes towards security and, in the IT world? Are people being as proactive enough? Are they, doing the updates? Or do you think there's, room for improvement?
Um, so I think in terms of the Caribbean, we it's hard to say because I've seen some people keep up in terms of properly securing their systems, having everything patched on time, or if they don't have it patched, they have the necessary preventative measures in place to prevent the exploitation. So they have their firewalls in place, they have their intrusion detection systems in place. What I think happens is that when it comes to coding in-house developed applications and doing penetration tests on web applications or even installed applications, because there's still some locally developed software that is actually installed on the system. There's no testing of it or testing of the security features around it. Because of that, there are a lot of vulnerabilities that go unnoticed for maybe years. And the only reason why it goes unnoticed is because they've never brought in a security professional to actually run and test those security features on the application to prove that their application is secure. What I would say is that it's slowly gotten better with well, it's always been good with financial companies, but I think other companies, like let's say in the manufacturing sector well, mostly manufacturing and utilities, I think they are only now catching up to it. I think they still need to do more.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Ubike, for your presentation on the introduction to pen tests, and Mr. Nicholas for co-hosting as well. For the persons who are interested about pen testing, feel free to put your comments below and in the Slido as well. Next off, we're going to go on to our second spotlight speaker, who is Miss Recallia. She's going to be talking a bit about entrepreneurship. So stay tuned.
Hi, everyone. We are back with another spotlight. And today I'm pleased to have with me Recallia Phillips of Sister Isle Digital. Did I get that name correct?
Yeah, you got it right. You got it right.
Awesome.
Both names. Yeah.
So Recallia is a founder, content marketer, and strategist. But maybe you could give us a introduction about yourself and what you do for the layman who may not know these things.
Yeah, so Sister Isle Digital is the culmination of almost a decade of experience working in content in different lanes or niches. So I would have gotten my start in content with my YouTube channel, Recallia's Top 5 or RC5, which was meant to be, social commentary around different topics in Trinidad and Tobago that everyone would have related to. And while I was the host and presenter, that sort of caught the eye of the Loop News team, which was in fledgling stage at the time. So I applied, I went in, they loved me, they wanted me to join. So I became the face of Loop News for Trinidad and Tobago. And I served as journalist, writer, producer, and presenter as well. And working at Loop really allowed me to delve into my love for content in different ways and get a better idea of the media landscape and all of that. And while I was there as well, it also sort of made me realize that there were still spaces that needed voices. So while I was there, I started my lifestyle magazine, Recallia the magazine, which went through different iterations because I was still trying to flesh out what I wanted it to be. But as of today, it is a online lifestyle magazine for millennial women in Trinidad and Tobago. After I wrapped up my time at Loop, I went on to live and work in Tobago, where I served as content manager for Visit Tobago. And that gave me my legs in tourism, and delve officially into, the official role as content manager and content marketing and all of that. And then, about like a year into my time there, the pandemic hit, and I started thinking about, what can I do, in case, things, don't go the way that I wanted it to. I started thinking about, where my skills and my experience and my expertise lied. So I decided to officially register my business, Sister Isle Digital, and, use that as a dual company where I would offer content marketing services as well as educate. I'm a firm believer that people don't buy into what they don't know or they don't understand. So a core aspect of Sister Isle is educating as much as possible, which I do through my content. So yeah, that is basically a quick rundown of how Sister Isle Digital came to be.
That's excellent. And I personally do remember your top 5 videos. I find they were very entertaining. And it's so interesting. You have this history of your own content and then all of this industry experience. And now you're taking all your learnings into your business. So in Sister Isle Digital, you said your main thing is education, which is great because I have you look locally and many people just do not know about these things. Many of these businesses seem to be unaware of all the different ways in which they can get audiences for them. So can you speak a bit about, what are the actual services or the concepts that you would be educating your clients about?
Right. So content marketing is the core of it. So especially in Trinidad and Tobago, digital marketing on a whole is still it's a known as a buzzword in the country, but it's still a bit elusive for many people, especially many business owners. So content marketing is even more elusive. My strengths lie in content and content marketing. So the majority of my content is focused around, what is content marketing, how it can help your business, how it can help, you build yourself as an authority and as a voice, how you can build long-term customer retention and loyalty and all of that. And then the sub themes or the sub pillars or the secondary pillars focus on social media strategy and management and copywriting, because those 3 areas, for lack of a better word, it's a bit of like a trifecta of, what I have been doing over these last few years. So I'm leaning into the areas that I have a skill set in, and also recognizing that there are significant gaps where these things are concerned. So copywriting, for example, I think that when it comes to business and marketing, people really underestimate the power of words. They just say, oh, well, it's just as simple as putting out, this particular, like buy this, buy that, or whatever. But people don't understand how those same words, can make or break someone deciding to buy or not, and having that connection with a brand or a company or a person or whatever the case may be. Having compelling copy for your marketing, for your blog, for your website or whatever is a crucial element in building that connection that I think is overlooked. So it is another area that I speak on, as well as offer services in.
Wow, so that's a lot, and I can see how it could be somewhat overwhelming. So if you could just break it down for us. So you mentioned social media, advertising, and can you just talk a bit about the platforms, the different channels? You mentioned blogs and websites, I believe. So can you, just talk about these different channels in which businesses should be putting content on?
Yeah, so again, utilizing, speaking from a specific Trinidad and Tobago context, what has happened, I've recognized, is businesses, small, medium, and large, they know they need to, be on social. They know that, digital marketing is a thing. But I think the missing link or the gap in all of that is creating a strategy that links to what they're trying to accomplish. So what a lot of them do is they'll just have an Instagram, or they'll have a Twitter, they'll have a LinkedIn, they'll have a Facebook, but the content isn't aligned with any goals. They'll just put up things. They'll just say, buy from me, I have a sale on, I have a special on. They wouldn't pay attention to proper branding that's linked to the company. If there are any particular goals that they're trying to accomplish within a particular period, they have not learned, or they don't understand that there's a connection between the two. So another thing I've recognized too, like understanding, that these social media platforms are created for business as well. There's a specific subsection for these platforms that have tools and everything specifically for businesses that they have not taken advantage of. So I always tell people, don't post for posting's sake. It's very important to ensure that you're using the various social media platforms, to your advantage within your budget, your resources, whatever the case may be. In order to properly leverage the message and whatever it is you're trying to market, or whatever you're trying to communicate with your audience. So that is, I guess, a bit of where the strategy comes in understanding, all right, well, you don't have to be on 5 million social media channels. What works best for you, as well as, where's your audience? Are they spending time on Instagram? Are they spending time on Facebook, Twitter, whatever the case may be? And crafting a strategy that is in line with what they would be attracted to at the end of the day.
So that's interesting that you mentioned that point of strategy. And so just to bounce that back to you, I guess in a way, strategy is how you take all of these touch points and you kind of weave a kind of consistent story for your audience, such that they kind of work to each other. So can you give a bit of insight of what that would entail?
So I'll just give you a quick overview of like what I do with some of my clients. One of the first things I ask them is, what are you trying to accomplish in the next 3, 6 months, a year? As in, what are your business goals? Depending on what the business goals are, let's say for the next 3 months, then, we can evaluate what channels they're currently on. I typically do an audit for, what they are currently on. If they have a website, if they have a blog, if they don't have a blog, but they're trying to, launch a blog, whatever the case may be. So I'll look at all of the platforms that they currently have, as well as under the audit, look at potentially additional platforms that they can look at to further leverage and maximize on their content, depending on the platforms, the social platforms, using that as an example, depending on the social platforms that they're on. From there, I'll take a look at what some of their top performing posts were in the past. What kind of posts generated the most engagement? What were their least performing posts? What type of engagement they had? Was it positive? Was it negative? Looking at that can help me have an idea of what kind of content to replicate going forward. So we know, all right, this piece of content did really well, and it was probably because of what was said, the subject matter, whatever the case may be. If they have a blog, they don't know how to write, they don't know what to write about. One thing I always look at, which is I think is a quick tool or hack, is I ask clients, okay, so what are some of the most frequently asked questions that your clients ask you? That can be a simple starting point for the content you can create, because it means that if they're asking you, they're probably also asking Google. And if it is you are now creating blog posts around the questions that your audience is already asking, you're directly speaking to them. You're already showing them that you have the answers and the insight to their pain points and can possibly be a solution to that pain point or that need. And of course, when you go deeper, you can implement, SEO and all of that to optimize your blog posts to ensure that when people are beyond your clients, are looking or asking those same questions via Google, you are also optimizing your brand and your business for additional clients or customers to find you and realize, hey, well, I have, there's someone who knows exactly how to solve this particular pain point or be the solution to my problem. So it's really great in terms of lead generation as well. And the more you create that kind of content, whether it's by social media, by your blog, by YouTube, podcast, whatever the case may be, the more you consistently build yourself up as an authority, people start to look to you as oh, you're that person that does that, so I have a question about X, Y, and Z. They start to trust you more, and even if they're not in a position to buy from you today, they'll keep you in mind a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months, whenever, when they are ready to purchase, because they know immediately you are that go-to for X, Y, and Z.
Yes, I think that's very important. I'm really happy to hear how you have this sort of consultation audit service, because it would mean that you don't really have a kind of cookie cutter process. You really actually go in and you drill into the needs of your customers. And I think that's like the sure way to get that satisfaction and have them really happy about what you do for them.
Exactly. And that is why, for a long time, like I knew what it is I wanted to highlight in terms of my skill set and my experience, but I didn't want to do it too early, because there was a particular period when everyone was offering their services and their skills as a social media this and digital marketing that. But unfortunately, what was happening is there were, not saying everyone, but there were some people who were jumping on that bandwagon, because digital marketing, content, social can be lucrative, if you do it right and if you have, certain clientele and all of that. But unfortunately, not everyone understands the nuances and the ins and outs. And what has happened as well is, unfortunately, social media and the digital age that we're in has sort of fostered a sort of period of instant gratification. So what has happened is people want quick fixes and quick wins. And when people who are touting themselves as, experts, are trying, they sell themselves as offering quick wins, and you can gain 10,000 followers in a week and this and the other. But if you really understand how social media works and how content and how digital works, you know that it's what I call a marathon. It's not a sprint. And unfortunately, some businesses would have taken up with, entities who probably were not very versed in what they do. And it sort of created or reinforced a notion that this whole social media thing, this digital thing, is a waste of my time and money. So I wanted to start showcasing what I did in a time when people would listen. And thankfully, during lockdown, it was a time when I wasn't trying to directly say, hey, I'm offering services right now. I wanted to build, showcase, this is what I know. This is, what you should know as well. Even if you don't hire me as a consultant, as a business owner, this is what you should be cognizant of. This is what you should be aware of. So you are now in a more informed position to make the right decisions where certain things may be.
Yes, I totally agree on that point, that a lot of this digital stuff, it's well, as you said, rightly said, it's a marathon. It's about consistency in your content and delivering that quality. And I really like how you actually deliver value just for free, just to be able to establish yourself as sort of a thought leader in this space. So I heard how you mentioned you're talking about lockdown. And I was just curious about how the outset of the pandemic would have affected business, because we've seen a lot of people, a lot of companies having this digital transformation, which they said, they weren't interested in, but like the pandemic kind of forced their hand. So I was wondering how that looked from your perspective.
I mean, I'm trying to say this as carefully as I can, given the circumstances around, lockdown and, what caused it. Of course, it's the reasons for the lockdown are horrible, but to a small extent, I'm kind of happy that it sort of forced the hand, as you said, in certain regards, because a lot of businesses, and just more than businesses, but just people in a whole, had a mindset that everything that we're doing right now was not necessary, in spite of the fact that the world has been going in this direction for a very long time. And unfortunately, Trinidad and Tobago tends to be a few steps behind when it comes to, I don't want to say jumping on the bandwagon, because it's not a bandwagon. It's just, recognizing that this is something that we need to adopt and adapt into our day-to-day. I was personally very happy to see, and I think happy is such a generic word, but I was very impressed. I was very happy to see the expanse of business as a result. I was very happy to see that businesses that had brick and mortar had switched to digital. And more than just switch to digital, like they took their time in developing certain things to ensure that that customer experience was there. I was happy to see that there was a bit of an explosion of new businesses popping up as well. People recognizing that there are gaps in these different areas and lanes, and I already do this, so I should probably start doing X, Y, and Z. Of course, that would have been as a result of people people being on the breadline in certain ways, but at the same time, it sort of shifted the potential, or the idea of potential. We tend to look to the outside a lot, and certain things I've noticed is when you look at the branding for certain small businesses, when you look at how they're communicating, the product offerings, it is on a different level that it has ever been at compared to last year, year before, a few years before, to the point where I've had conversations with some people and they look at some businesses and like, wait, this is local, So I think as well, considering how small our world is digitally, it's given us access to so many more tools where we don't have to rely on everything from outside. And people are seeing that, all right, well, local doesn't necessarily mean subpar quality or inferior quality or whatever. I can get everything that I need right here, in my backyard, whatever the case may be. So yeah. I've been very happy to see that progression.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so happy to hear any story about, changing that rhetoric and the perspective of, what the whole local versus foreign discussion. I would like to talk a bit about your content creation in terms of, I guess, in a sense, you also have to apply your own knowledge in your own content creation. So you're kind of, being testament of your skills. So I was just curious, in terms of how do you, how you go about it, and like, what's your setup? Any fancy tech you may use?
No fancy tech, at least not yet. And that is something, I guess, as you said, I could use as a testament to, because a lot of people think that you need to have a large budget. You need to have Mac. You need to have, all these these big lights and a full production team, a full-on photographer, or whatever the case may be, in order to create content or to do video or whatever the case may be. A lot of the stuff that I do myself. Of course, there are plans to improve as time goes by, to probably get a professional to have someone like edit the stuff for me or whatever the case is. But I believe in starting small. You don't get to the mountaintop, at the top. You have to, work your way up. And I talk about that in my content as well. Where video is concerned, for example, video content is where it's at right now. People are naturally looking for more dynamic types of content, and video definitely is at the top when it comes to engagement. So I've been trying to implement a lot more video content into my own strategy. And I actually created a post the other day talking about that, showcasing that, you don't have to have the best of everything. I use my camera phone. I have a phone stand. I have a mic. I just ensure that I angle myself properly, to ensure that I get the best lighting. There's a teleprompter app that I use to get out everything that I want to say, because I can talk a lot and sometimes I can stray, especially if I'm getting really passionate about a particular topic. So that teleprompter app is one of my favorite tools that I use. And it also allows me to edit within app. And I've been using that for my social media content. I also try to be as frank where certain things are concerned, because no one is perfect, especially in this time that we're in. I love the fact that the period that we've been in for the last 2 years has allowed us to be a lot more human. Yes, we have brands. Yes, we have businesses, but ish happens. So I'm learning myself, and I like to highlight that. So for example, when I started out with Sister Isle, I was thinking about all the platforms that I wanted to be on, and one of them definitely was YouTube. And I thought YouTube would have been simple because I've done video in the past. I have produced video in the past, but I overestimated how time consuming it would have been in addition to crafting my blog posts, in addition to crafting my social media strategy, as well as actually having clients and other things that's going on. So at the time, I actually have one YouTube video on the Sister Isle channel right now, but it's not permanent. It just was a learning lesson for me to realize, and this is what I tell people, you don't have to be everywhere all at once. And this is where, ensuring that you plan your content out accordingly and finding the right tools that make life a lot easier come in handy. So there are plans to build out my YouTube strategy, and I will be producing more video for the new year. So there'll be a lot more visuals beyond social media. And I just use, there are a multitude of tools that allow, myself, as well as anyone who really wants to get into to execute whatever type of strategy that they want to at any given point in time.
Great, great. So I like what you mentioned about the whole, crafting the appropriate content for the right platform, and you don't just try to dive in any platform just so. So I was wondering, what would be your advice to content creators who are up and coming and they still undecided on what's probably the best platform to get into?
I say lean into what you have a natural affinity for. So for me, even though I started with YouTube and I had to take a temporary pause, I wasn't too worried because I still write. I genuinely enjoy writing. I like to write. So I've been using my blog as an additional platform to get the information out. So I would say first and foremost, lean into what you'd have a natural affinity for, because if you start doing things that you already kind of feel off about, it'll start to feel like a chore. So if you like to talk, if you like to do tutorials, if you can get your point across, visually better versus writing, lean into YouTube, lean into TikTok, if it is you like me, you like to write, do that. If you have any other skill, like in any kind of form of content creators, because they go beyond, talking and writing, try to find the best mix that, again, would showcase what it is you do the best, but try to do it in such a way, or try to find the tools or platforms that are naturally aligned with your skill set, and then grow from there.
Excellent. So thank you so much, Recallia, for being part of the DevFest. I really enjoyed our conversation. You have any final thoughts for our viewers?
If my only thought, I guess, would be if you're not familiar with content marketing and you have a business and you're trying to promote or push a particular product, or you're trying to enhance on your brand, I would definitely advise in trying to get a better understanding of what it is, because that is something that can truly give you a better connection with your audience. And there are vast amounts of ways that you can implement content marketing into your existing strategy, or creating your own strategy that would, as I said, create or establish you as an authority, build a connection with your audience, and in the long term, ensure that you have customer and brand loyalty. So, yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So I think that brings an end to this spotlight session. Thanks again for joining us, and thank you to the viewers for checking out this session. I will see you all in the next one.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Recallia, on your one-on-one tips on content and social media marketing. And for the persons that are listening out there, please remember that success doesn't really come overnight. It is a work in progress. So if you have an idea and there's something that you'd like to present, go straight ahead. Next off, we are going to talk to our spotlight speaker, Miss Janiqua. I hope I got your name right. She is going to be talking about bots. So stay tuned.
Hi, good day, everyone. I'm Nicholas Mendez, and I have with me Janika John, who will be presenting on how to build a Twitter news bot in a single day. So Janika, welcome to the DevFest, or I should say welcome back, as you are a returning speaker.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. I love DevFest. It's one of my favorite events of the year.
Oh, that's so great to hear. So can you give you the audience a bit of introduction about yourself, a little background?
Yeah, sure. So as Nicole said, my name is Janika. I'm a software engineer. Right now I work mostly in front-end development. I'm based in Brussels, but I'm from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And I am also a Twitter developer insider, just recently named within like the past couple of weeks, which means that I'm basically an expert or a point person with Twitter APIs. So hope you enjoy this talk today.
Oh, great. So you are like the first Caribbean Twitter insider, you would say?
Yeah, definitely. I'm the first Caribbean one.
But not just Caribbean, I think you're like the first batch of insiders on the whole, right?
Exactly. Exactly. It's a brand new program, and we were, I think, 5 of us in total, the inaugural cohort, let's say, for this year. So really exciting.
That is so awesome to hear. Okay, so I guess without further ado, I'll let you get right into it.
Sure. All right, so as you can see here, I'm gonna present, and as mentioned before, I'm gonna present to you on how you can build a Twitter news bot in one day. And the idea is really for you to be able to build a bot either by the end of this presentation or by the end of this week. So as I went through a little bit before, my name is Janika John. I'm a software engineer based in Brussels. I work right now as a front-end engineer mainly, and I'm a Twitter developer insider. On most social media, Twitter, Instagram, and so forth, you could reach me by my @name, Janika John. DM me any questions that you have about this presentation. So funny enough, Twitter just launched V2 of their API yesterday, which is really exciting because it's much better than the API that they had before, a lot more features, a lot easier to get onboarded. But because of this launch, some of the code that I'm going to show you, and I'm going to specify which ones and exactly where, have just become obsolete just less than 24 hours ago. But all the concepts remain the same, and I will make it very clear which ones still are relevant and which ones you might want to upgrade. It doesn't mean that the code won't work right now, but it just makes more sense for you to start working with V2 right away, especially since it's so much better. So diving into it, what will we build? Here's just a brief overview of the architecture. We will have the bot service. We'll use Node.js, Express.js. I work mainly with JavaScript, so that's why I stuck with my expertise here. And this will push directly to Twitter via their APIs. And we'll also use Firebase for some persistence, a document-based store, just to store the URLs of the news articles, just to prevent the bot from tweeting the same news articles over and over. So here's a very basic overview, just for you to get a kind of bird's eye view on what we're building here today. So before I dive into the code, I know you're probably eager to see the code, but this is just a screenshot of a bot that I have running right now, SVG Newsbot on Twitter. And I basically pass RSS feeds from Vincential news websites and tweet them out periodically. Of course, I'll also be rewriting this bot using Twitter API version 2. So practical steps, what you would need to do. You definitely need to create a Twitter account. Don't confuse this with your own personal account. You would want to create an account that the bot tweets to. When you create this account, you need to also apply for a Twitter developer account. Now, I mentioned that they just launched API V2 yesterday. And the exciting thing is with V2, you could actually get onboarded really quickly in that you don't have to wait for a long application period. Before, you used to have to fill out a form with some information, send it to Twitter, wait for a while, sometimes days, for them to reply and actually enable your access to the API. Now there's a new tier which is called like Express tier or Express service. And essentially you don't have to wait for a reply. You could get tinkering around with the API straight away. So, but as I said, first you would need to go to developer.twitter.com and actually create this Twitter account that the bot would tweet from. You will also need to set up a Firebase account, as I mentioned, because you're going to be using Firebase for some easy persistence of the information on your computer. And this, I have to mention, install Node.js. This is something we take for granted sometimes as front-end developers or as developers that work with JavaScript. Not everybody has Node.js installed, and all of these things need Node.js to work. So, code, the part that you were really waiting for. One of the first things that I do is set up an Express server. There is a very useful website from Express, I believe it's from Express, where you could just do a simple hello world. They give you all the code snippets, maybe like 7 lines of code, and you could get it up and running just to see a simple hello world on your screen. And that's a good way to know that your Express server is up and running. And we will need that to be the engine of the bot, essentially. So right here, my Express server running. And the part that I really want you to focus on here is that I have a require.src bot, and I will dive into the actual bot code very soon. So set up and run your Express server. While you have your Express server up and running, we'll also need to set up our firebase.js file. And the reason why we set up a firebase.js file is, like I said, we're going to be doing some persistence. We're going to be sending some information over to our Firebase database. And this is basically almost all of the code needed to do the initialization. I love Firebase. It's really easy to, I mean, it's a NoSQL database, so it's really good for things like this, situations like this, where you just want to store URLs and quickly check if the URL existed before. Unstructured data is perfect for this use case. And it's really, really easy to get started. As you can see here, just a few lines of code and we're good to go. You notice here, I will highlight this line right here, process.end.api key. And I also have this Firebase config. You would want to be sure not to put any secrets, API key, this type of stuff in your main code. It's just a best practice, but even if you want to open source it, for example, you'll want to keep those keys somewhere else and access it from the code. So this is just a basic setup. I'll give you a few minutes to just read it through, a few seconds to read it through. Right. So after we have our Express server running and we have our Firebase setup running, then we get to the meat of the bot, the meat of the matter, which is actually the bot.js file. And this is where the action happens. Here I require Firebase. So this was actually the file that was required in the Express file. And here you could see I call Firebase in. And that's because, as I said, we want to persist some of the URLs when we get the feed items. Here, I also have this function where I fetch the feeds. So I use something called a feed parser. If you look on NPM for feed parser, you will find it. And this is something you can use even with Twitter API v2, it doesn't matter. If you're JavaScript friendly, you can use that. And essentially what that does is that it helps you to read RSS feeds from different websites and break it down in a programmatic way. So I use feed parser, I fetch the feeds, and then here I iterate through each of the feed items. And then here, as you can see, I have this child ref. What does this child ref refer to? It's actually the reference to the Firebase database. And a unique identifier or something, let's say, that can help us identify if we tweeted something before, is the URL of the news site. And here we set it in the child ref itself. Then I have console log just for me when I'm looking at my logs, I can understand which parts of the code executed and which not. And I also have a local set where I add the feed links. Continuing with the bot.js, of course, we don't want to just also read from the feed, but we also want to tweet it. So here we could see how I actually construct the tweet, and this is actual code that's running the SVG news bot. How I construct the tweet to be tweeted out to the website, to the Twitter account. I mentioned that the API v2 came out, and some parts of this code is a little bit obsolete. All the core concepts remain the same. But I took a quick look, and Twit, which is the library, really useful library that I use in order to interact with the Twitter API, it has not yet been updated to support API v2. And like I said, it just came out yesterday. It was just released officially yesterday, although there was some trial period for a while. And so it will take some time for these libraries, these third-party libraries, to kind of get up to speed, let's say, with the API v2. But there are ways that you can interact with API v2 directly if you so desire. But yeah, I just wanted to point out that this library is not yet up to date. And as I said before, it doesn't mean that this code wouldn't work right now, right today. My bot is still running, but of course, over time, you would want to catch up and update to API v2. So here, as you can see, I set this object with the params, different params. I have the status, which is the news story that I build. And I build that from the title of the RSS feed. It's your choice. You can build it from whatever elements that you get from the RSS feed. Maybe you want to include a few lines. Well, maybe all the lines won't fit, but maybe you want to include a few starting words, let's say, from an article. You can do that as well. I just chose the headline, the title, and I also upload the picture itself that was posted with the news article to Twitter. And the response from that is actually a media ID, and I pass that media ID in as well. And here is a necessary step for Twit, but it also applies to the Twitter API, which is that you have to specify the post type. Then finally, the magic is the Twit object has a function called post, and it takes these parameters, the post type, these parameters, as I mentioned before, with the status, the news story, the media ID, and so forth. And I also have this very basic callback function that would just respond with whatever data or error or so forth. So as you can see, it's really, really straightforward, even with API v2, as I will show you in a few seconds. It's really straightforward to get the bot up and running. And so the final step, believe it or not, is once you have all of that code sorted out and running and test each section, you just have to deploy this code to your favorite cloud hosting platform. I use Heroku. I just find it very easy to use, but there are tons of other options out there. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to me at Janica John, as I mentioned before. And I will highly, highly encourage you to visit my GitHub, github/luvi/botstarter and start that repo. I'm going to show you quite quickly now some of the API version 2 calls and also the repo. But the reason why I'm encouraging you to start this repo is that I'm actually going to publish some starter code that you could just clone, make a few changes, and get started with your own Twitter bot. So let me just quickly show you some of the calls that are available on Twitter API version 2. So I'm using Postman. You could use your favorite service, Insomnia, or so forth. And one of the most interesting ones, or one of the ones I would apply to us here, is actually manage tweets. So I will close this and I will go to manage tweets, and we can see here that we can create a tweet. And this is API version 2, as you can see here. And you know, it's quite simple. You just have to specify the post. and put the text and send the call to this endpoint. Of course, you have to also be authorized. You have to get your consumer key, your consumer secret, your access token, and your token secret. And then you're able to post to this endpoint. You could also delete tweets from this endpoint. And the exciting thing as well about the API version 2 is that not only can you send text posts, but you could also, for the first time, something you weren't able to do on 1.1, send polls as well, post polls. So you could imagine some interesting Caribbean bots could come up, maybe setting up polls between who has the best, I don't know, festival, and reading some APIs and maybe tweeting out some information and getting some like feedback based on that. So some interesting things can happen there. Of course, there are a lot of other things available here. You could take a look for yourself. And the last thing I will show you is actually my dashboard, my Twitter developer dashboard. I have my Spaces Search project here. As you can see, they mentioned the new access levels that are available. And then once you go in here, you would want to set up first a project. So this is new to the new developer portal. You just set up a project, specify your details, and you get the keys and tokens that I mentioned before right on the screen. And then you would copy them into your .env file or put them on Heroku or your service of choice, and get the bot up and running. So, and this is the repo. Start on GitHub. I'm going to be publishing something just to help you get started with your bot as soon as possible. So that's it. Happy hacking. I really hope that you enjoyed, and I hope that I will see more Caribbean Twitter bots. There's a lot of things that we could do, a lot of powerful things. And yeah, looking forward to see what everybody creates.
Awesome. Thanks for that presentation. One thing that always might confuse me with bots, because I don't really have that much experience. For your solution, and if you could mind going back to that overall diagram you gave, it's nice. Give us the nice overview. Because I understand certain bots might have like that different trigger, right? Some bots might trigger in response to like an event and then tweet it out. It's probably looking somewhere for an update and then we'll retweet it out. Is that something what your approach that's relevant to your approach?
That's a great question. In my case, no, I use time. So I just use a loop interval in JavaScript. And I have an interval, I think, set of 3,000 milliseconds or so, or 30,000 probably. And this just helps me to not hit the limits of the API, because Twitter, of course, they have different limits for the APIs. But in my case, since it's something so static, it just depends on news sites and when they publish, I just periodically check for new posts, and that's also why I persist the URLs, so that when I check and I see URLs, I could quickly go to that Firebase database and just check, is this something I've seen before or not?
Oh, okay. So you are looking at these news sites in case there are new articles, and then like, okay, for an article, put in the database and then retweet it out from the database.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Awesome. So that's interesting. So the bot is really just an Express app.
Exactly. And that's why I really wanted to do this presentation, so people could understand that it's quite simple. It seems intimidating when you see a Twitter bot, but it's quite simple. It's really something you could do in one day.
So then, with the bot itself, the bot is really just that looping mechanism. So there won't be any like routes on the Express app itself that you would need to make requests to. Okay.
No. And in fact, if you want to, you could kind of exploit the Express a bit more and put a front end if you want. Right. So just, since you have it available, you could just put up a simple landing page, especially using Heroku. For people to visit.
That's cool. You could put like check in to see the status of a URL if it was really pulled and then tweeted out and things like that. So that's where
Exactly.
that's where the express
Exactly.
come in. That's awesome. And you mentioned Heroku. I absolutely love Heroku and I really depend on it. I wonder if you could speak more like how you use it and what features you really like.
Yeah, so I love Heroku. I use it for almost all of my projects. One of the things that I started using recently, which I am really a fan of, I don't know if everybody's aware of it, but you can actually have different staging environments based on different apps. And I have, for example, for one of my applications, I have it kind of hooked into a GitHub repo. So what happens is once I push to master or main, depends on what the name of your branch is, it automatically publishes, yes, but not immediately to my production environment. It goes to one of their staging environments. And because of this, the way that I have it set up, it actually has a URL that only I am aware of, that's public on the internet, actually, that I can go and just check and make sure that things didn't crash. Because, you know, sometimes things work locally and then you release it and it doesn't work. So it's nice to be able to really just check there and see if it works. I could even put that behind a wall if I really feel like this part is super private, but for now it's okay for me. And then I just push a button on Heroku and it just promotes actually that website to production, which is really great. I love Heroku.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's like same thing for me, right? For me as well. That CI/CD pipeline. So you get to set up your auto deploy. So I think that was like the first feature from Heroku was like, well, wow, with the auto deploys, but now they break it up and your app has a staging version, as you mentioned, and then you could promote it to production. But then you have two environments and you also have the preview branches. So when you try to make a merge request, it's going to auto deploy that and say, okay, well, you can actually test it there and then merge it back in.
100%.
Yeah.
I've caught a lot of bugs that way. In my pull request, I just looked at the preview branch and I realized, oh no, this is actually not working.
Mm-hmm. It's so convenient, and what I really love about it is, you know, all of these cloud platforms are out there and they give you these free trials, but one challenge is in the Caribbean is that access to that credit card, right? You know, they always require a credit card, but Heroku is completely credit cardless. So, you know, really big up to them.
100%.
Yeah. So I want to talk a bit about your community work. So, I mean, we know you're in the GDG community and you're doing these events, but that's not the only community work you do, right?
That's true. I should have mentioned it earlier, but I'm also founder of Women in Tech Caribbean. And what we really are, we're just trying to connect, let's say, all the women in tech at home or in the diaspora in one big pool. And the reason why I started it is because there are a lot of opportunities, especially, you know, as the years go on right now, specific to women in tech. And some companies are really looking to target women in tech. And so it's just good for us to have, you know, this central space to share all the opportunities and share job offers, opportunities, as I mentioned before, and also get to know each other better.
That is so awesome. I mean, thank you so much for organizing that community. And we have a speaker from Women in Tech Caribbean that's on the agenda as well. So it's always great to collaborate, and I really like how y'all are really pushing the diversity and inclusion effort.
100%, and I'm really so happy to see that there's so many women who are speakers here at such a technical event. I would say keep raising the bar, let's say, for diverse events in the Caribbean. I know some people make the excuse, or some people say that they can't find people, but we're here, we're loud, we're proud. Just reach out to us. We'll be happy to give technical talks.
100% agree, 100% agree. You don't need to look for this, all of these communities out there. So
definitely.
I think that brings us just to the end of our session. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with our audience in general?
I would just say, you know, as I mentioned before, tweet me. I really hope that you got something from this presentation that makes you feel like you can make a bot, but if for any reason you're stuck, feel free to tweet me, DM me, and let me know where you're stuck, and I will try to help.
That's so great. So thank you again so much for being part of the DevFest this year, Janika.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, of course, you're most welcome anytime. So that brings us to the end of this session, and we will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Janiqua, for your presentation on the Twitter bots. Last but not least, we're going to have Mr. Malcolm Bourne. Let me just call back the name again, Mr. Malcolm Bourne. He is a content creator, so stay tuned for him, guys.
Day, Mr. Malcolm Bourne.
Hello.
All right. So Malcolm is one of those Guyanese YouTubers that I find pretty funny. And in preparing for the first 2021, I thought I'll ask him some questions on how he got started and then where he want to go, as part of our spotlight section of DevFest, where we look for influencers, content creators, who can help those of us or young people who looking on to see how did this young man get started, and hey, one day I could become a Malcolm as a Malcolm want to be. You know, we never know. So let's get started. Malcolm, tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
All right. Well, most of you will already know Malcolm Bourne. I have the channel Unique Nation, YouTube, we on Facebook, Instagram. We recently started on TikTok. Some of people may know me as an animal advocate, more specifically dogs. I'm a major dog lovers. I actually just went and picked up 4 more of them, so now I get 12. Yeah, so I got some dogs. I also got a page for them also, but those different from Unique Nation. Those are Olympus Scanners, right?
What's the name of the dog page?
Olympus Scanners, GY.
Okay, nice. Go ahead.
Yes, those dogs. You will see me taking pictures of the dogs, training. I do a little basic obedience training and so forth. Apart from that, I work within the public sector. I recently finished my degree in business management in the University of Guyana last year.
Big up you, G.
And right now, what I basically do is most of the time I spend my time is with the dogs, with friends, socializing, and as much time as I could, trying to fit in YouTube and work, balancing everything.
Good. So, that's a good way for us to segue into the first question. And the first question for you is, how did you get started on YouTube?
All right, so this is kind of interesting because the thing is, right, I would say I started YouTube about 2 years ago, but I was officially on YouTube about 10 years ago because, like, since growing up from primary school, I was always trying to be the center of attention in terms of comedy. So I was known as like mostly class clown. So a lot of my peers would tell me, hey, yo, you gotta be a comedian when you grow up. With Guyana now, mostly comedians be the stand-up comedy. So be like, you gotta be on nothing to laugh about the one these comedy shows. But the thing is that people always think that because you're funny, you could just sit down and make up jokes. But something that you need to be natural with. Like people will be approaching me and be like, yo, start something funny. I'll be like, I can't just start something funny. You gotta be in the moment, you gotta be natural. Because when people is genuinely enjoying, right? So I would say in my late UG second year UG, so 2 years back, is when I seriously started focus on YouTube. Prior to that, I used to make these skits, and now and again I would make skits, upload it, and so forth. But nothing of I wouldn't say like quality content, because it'd be things like you just pick up your phone. Sometimes you had, the camera qualities has changed within the past years. There's like some real, in terms of image quality, it was terrible. But
Right.
we started on Facebook, and then we had on YouTube. But it was nothing constant. It was just like, you get your cousin come over, these little street kids, you do a little funny something and you just upload it.
Okay.
So 2 years back, me and my friend was sitting there, he's like, yo, this YouTube thing, I be watching people doing pranks and these things. Like, and actually, one person that inspired me is I get this guy by the name of Smoothio. He is an American YouTuber, and then the person that really encouraged me to start something was this guy, from Trinidad.
From Trinidad, yes.
So good. So for a while he was popping, and I was like, yo, I don't want to be, because now people, when I know start, was like, yo, you're copying or whatever it is, but Guyana is a unique place.
Yes.
Hence how we get name Unique Nation. That's how I name Guyana. So I was like, even if I do the same thing in Guyana, it will never be the same, because I know guys, people different and the response is going to be different. So that's how I started off with the interviews. Because when I first started uploading 2 years back, I used to do stuff like, if I see something trending in Guyana, I would just re-upload it. But that didn't work, because I tried to get like popular things and try to make it my thing and try to gain popularity after it. But what we find with these things is that you don't create a genuine fan base, because people just looking at the stuff, just grabbing random stuff, you get no direction, and also you find yourself getting a lot of copyright strikes and so forth. So I was
right there, I'm glad you mentioned that, and I didn't ask the particular question. And I really like how you're driving home that being one, authentic, two, building your content as genuinely you. But go ahead.
Yeah. So you realize that you're going no direction. You're getting people, you're getting likes, you're getting some subscribers. But at the end of the day, you upload a video now, and you upload another video, you're getting the engagement, because some people follow that. The next set of people, they know we putting up they've been interested in this. They gotta think you're putting up this alone. So it was all over the place. I was like, yo, let me try my own stuff. So with that, when I started building a genuine fan base, it was slow. After a while, people, so when you upload a video, people know what to expect. People know when Unique Nation upload a video now. It's not some random something from what's trending or something. It's most likely it's an interview, it's a prank, it's something engaging with the public most of the time. So that's how I went about starting it. When I started, I wanted to get it very official, but it didn't work, because I was trying to get a camera team, the right equipment and so forth, because, you're watching everybody else, they get this, but then you realize that if you wait and try to get everything perfect, you're going to never start.
Good.
So
that's a good point.
End up getting guys work.
That's a good point that I think we could dive into a little bit. That you don't need to get everything to start, and two, start with what you have. Nice.
Yeah,
I really
because
like
you
sorry, go ahead.
You could really make you could really make a lot of these simple devices that you have really work if you really know to use it and really spend the time with it. Because after my first video, I had a guy coming with a camera, and then after that he was busy and so forth. So I find I can't keep up the consistency if I got run behind this guy. So I went and I got one of them same little pocket point and shoot camera. It wasn't no big fancy camera, but it did the job. It recorded, and I used my phone as actually a mic. So when I go ahead and edit, I edit and I sing the audio. And people was recommending, I used to search on YouTube editing app, and they show you so much different app, and these things be so confusing because you now getting into these things. So it used to kind of discourage you, but I found it gets simple Android and iOS apps that you could use from your smartphones that could really
give us one or two recommendations that help you.
Well, the number one that I'd recommend is KineMaster. That's what I started using, and that's what I still use until today.
Wow.
And for the subscription, it's just $6 a monthly subscription, and it does every single thing that you expect an editing app to do, and it's so convenient because you can get it on your smartphone. And if it's a person that you have multiple things going on, and you need to be out and about, you don't need to sit down at a laptop and get stuff done. You could be out on the road, you get a little free time, you're in a bus, you sit down, you put your earpiece in, and you're working.
Right.
So that, but before that, I used to use Vivo Video. That is a nice basic one also. Yeah, that's a good start off one. But KineMaster for the $6 is really a great investment. I didn't think anybody could go wrong, and it's so simple to learn and so easy to use.
Good. Excellent.
Yeah, so
so you cover the equipment and inspiration question that I would have asked. But what I also wanted to know, since you've been on YouTube, list an achievement or something really good that being a YouTube content creator had caused to happen to you since you started, like as you say 2 years ago.
All right. So since I became a YouTuber, I would say the number one benefit is the amount of support that you will get from different people in different natures and different backgrounds and so forth that will reach out to you and try to, I'm not saying that it's a favoritism thing because, you get a little popularity and everything. It's just that it opens so much more opportunity. Because I ain't trying to make it sound like, as a YouTuber, you X amount of subscribers, you famous, everybody want to do. It's not that, but like when it comes to doing certain things with certain people, like you're more a little more exposed because more people know you. Get your name very big.
Right.
So it's
That
not
is
very
absolutely
hard.
true.
Yeah. So it's not hard for people to get to know you. So when it comes to certain opportunities and certain windows and doors opening, it really opens it because it allows you to meet so many different people in different walks of life because there are people reaching out to you, if it's a business, if it's an artist. And what I love about it also, I get to help people because I'm approached by a lot of upcoming artists, small business owners, and so forth. And what I usually do once is a local company and it's somebody small, I try to, do it for them for free. And try to benefit no monetary gain or whatever it is. Because to me, if I win and if all we win as Guyanese, because right now, Guyanese in terms, we now coming out into this whole social media era where we really tapping in and using the power of these social media websites, especially YouTube in terms of content creation, music, art, poetry, and these stuff. We're now tapping into the scene, whereas most of the other countries far ahead of us. So you might find some people, they would say, hey, I get X amount of subscribers. If somebody that get less subscribers than me or somebody that now upcoming, I ain't want to help them because they ain't on me level. But for me, I just look at it like, hey, if I help this person, sometimes this person gets a more popular video than me, but because me do a collaboration already, automatically I have to be winning because they see me in a video before, somebody might come and usually the thing is recommend. If you do a video, watch a video, now we're going to recommend something after. So get more local persons on the scene, they get more persons generating more views worldwide, and you get more people paying an interest in Tegian itself.
Nice. Very good. I really commend you for looking at things that way. One, and two, having the kind of worldview that if I help and next Guyanese, together we can make it. That speaks very deeply to me. And it goes counterculture.
Yeah, because the thing is it, so right, a lot of people may watch it YouTube, and at first I'd say so. I won't say that that is not part of why you pursue YouTube. So, but now people is watching YouTube like, hey, we watch it all these big YouTubers and be like, yo, they making a lot of money off of YouTube. So let me try and do a thing. And I tell you, honestly, especially in Guyana, if you try to do YouTube for the money, you ain't reaching nowhere far because you're gonna aim for the money, you're gonna see that you're making no money and you're not getting encouragement to continue doing it. It's gotta be something that you love doing. You just gotta love doing it, and then YouTube has just become like something that you like a hobby because you doing you and you just putting it out there. And that's something that don't make it look like a job. Hey, like things sit down, hey, yo, I gotta do this, hey, make X amount of money. I want this person do this, hey, let me do this, hey, and try. No, so because people might come to you, I get a lot of people is messaging me, hey, how much money you making by? I want to start. And I just tell them, I just say, honestly, if I tell you, when I screenshot it, I just screenshot the income I generate and send them. And I send them this, be like, you know, YouTube so long, the loan you making. I say, listen, if you coming on to YouTube for the money, coming for the wrong reason, and you know, you got genuinely like doing whatever you want to do and put out there before you head to YouTube or any social media app in terms of if you're looking to build a following or build a brand, you really need to love what you're doing.
Okay. That's a good piece of information. And I like how you share from tips of the app, tips of using your phone, and now you're speaking to someone who's thinking to become a content creator on your perspective and your attitude towards working. All right, I want to ask you about the list of platforms that you use. You mentioned it earlier, and I want you to tell me about the different platforms you use and how has life as a content creator been on these different platforms. So whether it be YouTube, Facebook, etc.
All right, so the two, I said the major one is YouTube, right? So everything is aimed on YouTube. Okay. The other apps now is like supporting apps to help promote my YouTube video. So I would use my WhatsApp as my WhatsApp status, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. So now these are the apps is supporting apps. So when I make one video, right, what I usually do is cut them into smaller pieces and I will upload it on these apps and direct people if they want to view the full video to YouTube.
Very good.
That's a very good strategy. Yeah, because what you find is that majority of people on Facebook. And the thing with Facebook, people is feel easier, like how YouTube, for share a video, you can click share and then tap into third-party apps to share it. Facebook now, you can share it on your wall.
Right.
You can like it, you can comment everything right there, you can tag people easily and so forth. So it generates an audience more quickly.
Right.
TikTok also, it's usually short clips. But you find people sit down, they scroll, and most of the time they reach into your video fast, and then they want to see more. So automatically they need to click into please excuse. Yeah. I'm sorry, Rodo.
Listen, one thing we not doing is editing this. This is a real conversation. Yeah, this is part of growing up in Guyana.
You know, Caribbean parents, eh?
You can depend on them, of course. Listen, you spoke on what inspired you to start. So I want to come down to the future perspective of your channel, and I want to find out from you, what are your plans for your channel going forward? Let's say we come back to DevFest 2024 and we have a next feature session. should some of the things we should expect to see Malcolm Bourne doing in 2024?
All right. So basically the aim of the channel, I wanted to reach a certain subscriber count. Previously it was 10,000. Now I'm stretching it to 15,000. Because what I want to do is use YouTube now. I have a small business, seasoning and pepper sauce. I want to use YouTube now as a promotional medium for my small business in due time. But I still need to get some things official with the small business. So I'm just building the channel right now, so I'm ready. I could promote it. So like all these YouTubers will get like merch.
Yes.
Because my product now for my small business would be like my merch. And that's why I'm going to be advertising. That's going to be my brand.
Nice.
So when you associate Unique Nation, you associate them with the seasoning.
Okay.
So that's why I'm trying to build it. Also, in terms of YouTube itself, right? And I think I'm speaking on myself on behalf of all other local content creator that uses YouTube as a platform. We would really like YouTube to recognize Guyana as a country eligible for monetization, because right now we're not eligible for monetization. So all the money with the thing that we making no money. We cashing out on no money because we can't use the address to verify it. We can't get money sent to us via checks or so forth because they don't recognize us. Anything we need to do is through the states. If you get somebody in the states, I hear a guy the other day, he set up one and the person set it up with take all the money. So that's one of the major things, and I find that some local persons now, they would done establish a channel, build a following, and then realize, when they reach the 1,000 subscriber, the 40,000 watch minutes to be eligible for monetization, they would find that Guyana is not on the list, and then they get discouraged. They don't want to do it anymore.
Right.
They don't want to start over. They don't want to do anything because it's like they see no future with it. Because I don't want to say that it's depending on the money, but
it helps.
There would be, it helps. It's a little encouragement, a little reimbursement, a little support for your hard work would mean something to a lot of people, because it gets some people actually like really just home doing nothing. So they trying to make YouTube a main income. And there's persons around the world that makes YouTube a main income. So I don't think Guyana should be deprived of the opportunity to utilize the platform for to generate the income.
Excellent. Good. I will I'll definitely send this on to my regional lead and then to the Google Global team and figure out what's behind Guyanese not getting to be monetized. So I'll follow up, and by the time we have DevFest 2022, we should, or before, we should be able to get some announcements. So finally, what type of content do you create? Like if somebody looking at this and they're a YouTuber in Europe, or they have merch to sell, just tell us what kind of content you create. I know it's not one kind, because I've seen more different things from you. So explain that.
So I do public interviews. That's one of the subscribers' favorites. I do skits, and I do pranks.
Nice.
Now and again, I would do a little dancing or singing, but that's usually just, if I reach a milestone, I can do it. That's like special. That's special, just for kicks, nothing serious, but it's basically surround pranks, interviews, and skits.
Nice. All right. So I really appreciate that. So I think my final question for you would be, um, if you had to give some quick advice to somebody who is where you are, Malcolm, 2 years back, probably they're in UG or GTI or somewhere, thinking about becoming a content creator. Um, Apart from all the advice you've given them so far, what would you do um, as a as an introduction into get them to start in content creation?
All right. Apart from me talking about the devices, equipment, editing app, and so forth,
Mm-hmm.
I would like to advise them to be genuine. Don't focus on the hype. Don't focus on working for somebody else. And
Nice.
don't worry about what people telling you, because you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna get a lot of negative energy supporting of surrounding what you're doing. Mainly because it is Guyana, and people aren't, I won't say aware, but as I said, I don't know why Guyana is slow into getting into the social media era,
Mm-hmm.
but people might look at you like you being weird but
Mm.
standing in front of camera and talking, standing in front of camera and singing, standing in front of camera modeling and doing this.
Mm-hmm.
People like, why are you doing this thing? Most people be like, why are you doing this thing in Guyana? It make no sense. What you doing? You're shipping this, you're following people. But I need you to not listen to those people. Get get
I
some
like
get
that. I need you to not listen to those people. I like that.
don't listen to them. You need people around you, surround yourself with positive people and surround yourself with people that content creators also that could
Right.
assist. You don't ever try to do it alone. Get people who are interested in the same thing
Mm-hmm.
and keep them close. The more collabs you could do, the more interviews you could do, the more you could connect with people would be better for you. Surround yourself with positive people, people who encourage you. Work with positive people. If it's something that you need somebody to work with, get somebody close to you. Don't try to go and hire somebody strange or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Get your same friend will use your best rules card instead your best friend.
Mm-hmm.
Tell you come and hold the camera for you
Nice,
while
nice,
you're
nice.
running the streets and whatever you do. If you're doing your makeup,
Mm-hmm.
you come and bring your boyfriend and put it for sit down and do the makeup on the face. You don't gotta get a model or some big popular person to do
Right,
something. You use who you got and
right.
you make it great. Because once it's unique, once it's genuine,
Mm-hmm.
you will get the support.
Excellent. That's how we can end. I would say nothing more, but to say thank you, and we will definitely be speaking again, Malcolm.
Yes, well, thank you guys a lot for the opportunity with this platform to me to express myself and also tell you about my channel
Mm-hmm.
and some of the things that I recommend. I know that you will forward it, and I
Mm-hmm.
expect to see the outcomes in the future.
Yep.
But thank you a lot once again. It was a great opportunity and a nice experience. You made the interview very, very. It was very, they make it feel very formal or
Right, right. I don't do
like
that formal thing. I don't do
it
that
was
formal thing.
like it feels like it's like me and you friends all the time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's
It's a
what.
great conversation.
Yeah, yeah. That's what content creation is about. Being unique and natural. People, and
Yeah.
it will resonate with the person looking at it. All right. So we'll speak again, and thank you very much. Just say the name of your channel one more time before you go.
It is Unique Nation.
Okay.
That'll be Unique Nation on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, as we say, instead of a conversation, we just gaff, right? So that was a proper gaffing we get there. So this would have brought us to the end of day two of the DevFest Caribbean 2021. And it was an honor to be your host for today. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys tomorrow for day three. to see some of our amazing spotlights interviewers. So remember to tune in tomorrow, guys. Do have a good evening and stay safe. Bye, everyone. Peace out.